happy to mentor this session, and I'm more happy to invite the speaker of this session, Dr. Jayaramane Aruchelvan from Defense Metallurgical Research Laboratory, Hyderabad. So he will be presenting his talk today in this morning session. So to tell a few more words about Dr. Aruchelvan, he's scientist E in Defense Metallurgical Research Laboratory, DMRL, Hyderabad. He obtained his PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, Madras in the year 2005. And he stood first in both BSc and MSc Physics from Pondicherry University. And he has received gold medal from Pondicherry University for first rank in MSc and University Prize from Pondicherry University for first rank in BSc. And apart from this, he has received many awards, prizes and medals for his contribution to research. He has got Young Scientist Award from Andhra Pradesh Academy of Sciences, Scientist of the Year Award from DRDO, etc. So he is also a well-known guest editor for Journal of Magnetism and Magnetic Materials, Physica B, and Journal of Superconductivity and Novel Magnetism. And he has published more than 125 publications in referred journals, and presented his work in more than 150 conferences. And under his guidance, 2 PhDs have been produced so far. And his current area of research include processing and characterization of directional solidified magnetostrictive materials, research and development studies on magnetostrictive thin films, design and fabrication of magneto-electric based magnetic field sensors. So with this short introduction, I now invite Dr. Aruchelvan to share his expertise and to the participants over here. Thank you. Dr. Aruchelvan, you can start.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. It's always a pleasure to share our experience, what we have been doing at DMRL with the audience. Although some of the research what we are doing are classified, but we'll always like to share the things like which are unclassified.
Please share your PPT. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. So today's my talk will be on processing and characterization of magnetostrictive materials. I would like to cover upon both bulk and small volumes. In this one, I would like, since we are basically physicists but working a lot on metallurgy and materials based, I would like to give a flavor on these materials, on the structure, microstructure and magnetic property evaluation in these magnetic properties. Okay, so basically, as Madam Mallar told, I am from Defense Metallurgical Research Laboratory, and I am working in Advanced Magnetics Group of DMRL. So these magnetostrictive materials, by and large, come under a large umbrella, something called as smart materials. And smart materials are some materials that respond quickly to an external stimulus, but in a specific manner. The external stimulus may be an electric field, a magnetic field, a thermal, or it can be even a stress. There are n number of smart materials. If you see into literature, there are several smart materials, and out of them, there are some 4 important smart materials which are actually useful for strategic sectors. I mean, like defense sectors we are working, and one of the other, or someone is being carried out in one of the defense labs throughout in our country. So to name a few, like the first one is the piezoelectric ceramics, the thermal shape memory alloys, the magnetic shape memory alloys, and the magnetostrictive materials. And the magnetostrictive materials is one which I am working, and I would like to brief upon the works carried out at our place in this talk. So the first one is the shape memory effect. Like shape memory effect, you know, it's a deformation, plastic deformation, and then recovery of the deformation upon heating or cooling. Basically, it's a thermal shape memory, and this thermal shape memory basically happens because of the phase transformation and twin boundary motion. So, for example, if you see, it is a twisted wire. It is a twisted wire. It is plastically deformed, and when we put inside a hot water, because of the shape memory effect, it is recovering its shape. It becomes a continuous wire. And again, when you remove and again when you twist it and put it under water, it can recover the shape. So this is an example of a simple thermal shape memory alloy. The examples are this retinol, which is a famous, and this has gone to several applications in aerospace and other civilian application. And the other one is the magnetic shape memory alloy. The next one is a magnetic shape memory alloy that changes with the application of a magnetic field. As I told you earlier, it changes, the thermal shape memory changes upon heating or cooling. But in the magnetic shape memory alloy, what happens is when you apply a magnetic field, a huge strain has been happening. And this is again because of the twin boundary, space transformation from martensite to arsenate, some complex metallurgy is involved. This is what it happens in the case of a magnetic shape memory alloy. So the next, maybe most of us will be knowing about the piezoelectric material. These materials generate an electric potential when subjected to a mechanical stress. And the inverse is also true. That means like when you give a voltage, it strains. So for example, you take a piezoelectric, this is basically a magnetoelectric composite. What they have done is like they have bent the composite. Once they bend, you produce a voltage. Otherwise, like if apply a voltage, it strains. So these are some of the manifestations of the piezoelectric materials, what has been carried out by several people. So with this one, let us come to the actual title of the talk, which is a magnetostriction. The magnetostriction, as the name tells you, the magnetostriction is defined as a change in the dimension of a ferromagnetic material when you apply an external magnetic field. For example, I am having a magnetostrictive material, simple, any ferromagnetic material. For example, you take an iron or cobalt or nickel, whatever it may be, of a length L, and when you apply a magnetic field to this one, what happens is the length of the material increases or decreases. When it increases, it is called a positive magnetostrictive material, and when it decreases, it is called a negative magnetostrictive material. So the magnetostriction is defined as change in length by the original length, and as I told you, it's a magnetostrictive strain, and since it is a strain, there is no unit for this one. Basically, it's a ratio. However, the variation of magnetostriction with respect to magnetic field is something like this. It increases with magnetic field, and upon some application of some high magnetic field, it saturates. The same thing if you want to see in the case of a thin film, it is manifested in a different way. See, as a film is always deposited on a substrate and the film cannot come out as a substrate, what happens is because of the application of magnetic field, the entire film substrate assembly bends. For example, in the case of a positive magnetostrictive material, where in the case of bulk and then it is expanding, when you apply a magnetic field, it bends in the downward direction. When it is negative, that means when it is contracting, it bends in the upward direction. The classic examples of this positive and negative magnetostrictive materials are terbium ion-based alloys and samarium ion-based alloys, which I will be detailing in my due course of my lecture. So the most basic magnetostrictive effect what has been seen is called the Joule effect, that is the change in the length. It is also called a linear magnetostriction. The inverse of this linear magnetostriction is also true to some extent, and this is called a Villari effect. That means when you apply a stress to the material, a voltage is going to be produced, or the magnetic state is going to be produced. I am correct, like the permeability of the material is going to get changed. This is called the Villari effect. And there are also other manifestations. As I told you, first the Joule magnetostriction is the linear magnetostriction. The inverse effect is the change in the magnetization when you apply a stress. There is something called the delta E effect, that is when we apply a magnetic field, because of the local change in the lattice parameter, the magnetoelastic constant, basically the elastic modulus of the material is going to get changed, and this is called the delta E effect. And the inverse is also true, that is when you apply a magnetic field, the elastic properties also get modified. The third one is the Weidmann effect, that is it has a torque. For example, as I shown in a shape and alloy, if you twist a material, or when you apply a magnetic field, the material gets twisted. The converse is Petrucci effect, where the helical anisotropy and EMF is induced. The next one is a magneto-volume effect, that is irrespective of any material, the volume of the material is going to be constant. That is, when I take a length of the material, when you apply a magnetic field, the length increases, but to maintain the volume constant, what happens is along the perpendicular direction, the length of the material decreases. So overall, if you see, the volume is going to be a constant. So the inverse is called Nagaoka-Honda effect. Okay, these are different manifestations of magnetostriction what we see. The most layman magnetostrictive effect is like the manifestation is whenever we go near a transformer, we get some humming sound. And the early days you used to have this choke in our houses, like there you get some kind of humming sound. All those things are happening because of magnetostriction, because there we apply AC magnetic field. When there is an AC magnetic field, the length of the material increases and decreases, and eventually it produces some waves, and those waves are going to give some sound waves to us, acoustic waves to us. So these are some of the simple manifestation of magnetostriction what we see in our day-to-day life. So then why at all this magnetostriction should occur? So the physical origin is something like this. For example, when the material is going to be in a paramagnetic state, that means like it is more than the Curie temperature, what happens is the magnetic domains are randomly oriented and the magnetic fields are random direction. But as and when we reduce the temperature and we come to a ferromagnetic to a paramagnetic to ferromagnetic state, there is an alignment of magnetization or the magnetic domains. And this gives rise to some kind of magnetostriction. But the magnetostriction manifestation is very small. But when we apply a magnetic field, the electron cloud distribution is so high, so you get an appreciable change in the magnetostriction. So as I told you, when I apply a magnetic field and when the material is going to be positive, there is an increase in the length, and when it is going to be negative, there is a decrease in the length. So coming to the application, there are plenty of applications in mechanical, medical, instrumentation, defense. However, since we are a defense lab, our interest is mostly towards developing sonar transducers, smart wings, mine detection, or some of the actuators, or some of the applications what we are looking for from strategic point of view. So the same thing is also useful in thin film form also it is applicable, and it is used as a force sensor where we are using an inverse magnetostrictive effect. As I told you, when there is going to be a stress in the material, there is going to be a change in the magnetization, and this magnetization can be measured, and this can be used as a force sensor, and it is also used as a micro pump. This is one of the design of micro pump which people have done already, and this pumping capacity has been found to be around 5.5 microliters per second. So this is the pumping capacity. These are used in like fuel channel injection or some kind of biomedical applications and all those things. These micro pumps are being used. So now the next important thing is, okay, we have the material, but how do you measure the strain in the material? So there are several methods of measuring the strain. The most conventional method used for measuring the strain is the strain gauge technique. You know, the strain gauge technique basically uses a Wheatstone network because it's basically a resistor. When you have 4 resistors PQRS, one of the 3 resistors are kept constant, and the 4th resistor you connect a strain gauge. And we know whenever there is a change in the length of the material, the resistance is going to change. There is a unbalance in the bridge. You balance the bridge by applying a suitable voltage, and that can be converted in terms of a strain. The next thing is a capacitance bridge. You know, in between a 2 parallel plate capacitor, as the distance between the capacitors changes, you know C is equal to capacitor A epsilon naught by D. As the distance between the capacitors changes, the capacitance is going to get changed, and that is also a technique for finding the magnetostriction. The third one is the strain based hysteresis loop. That is like you apply a stress and you see how the magnetic loops are going to get changed. You can also do by small angle magnetization rotation, which are very sensitive, but they are very complex to do. And also we can measure the transfer susceptibility, which are both an indirect technique to exactly measure the magnetostriction. But conventionally, the first 2 techniques, what I have told, the strain gauge technique and the capacitance techniques, are mostly used for measuring the magnetostriction. So coming to the materials and how this magnetostrictive material stand in comparison to the other material. The most conventional material used for magnetostriction, or the classic material I would rather say, is called the terphenol D. This is a name based on the company which has developed this material. It's a patented alloy, and that shows a magnetostrictive strain of 0.16% to 0.24%, and the actuation voltage is less than 15 volts, and the response is very fast, and it can be used. The Curie temperature is high, maybe up to 100-150 degrees centigrade we can use. And these are some of the magnetostrictive material. But when we compare with the shape memory alloy, but you see in the shape memory alloy, the magnetostrictive strain what we get is about 5%, which is much superior to magnetostrictive material. But the only problem here is the magnetic field required is very high. You have to apply several Teslas of magnetic field to produce this one, and also the material should be a complete single crystal for showing such a high shape memory effect. The third one is the nitinol. Nitinol also shows, because we have seen the wire, twisted wire is going to untwist itself when you apply a thermal thing. But the problem is here is thermal environment cannot be used all the way, all the time. And one more thing is the frequency response in this material is also difficult, because we cannot heat a material fast and cool the material fast. But in the case of a magnetostrictive material, you can apply a AC current at any high frequency up to 1 kilohertz or up to several megahertz it can be applied. The piezoelectric material is good. At the strain levels are much low compared to your magnetostrictive material, and this is a polymer based material which is having, but the only problem with this material is the temperature capabilities are very poor in this PVDF TRFE. So when you compare all these materials, the magnetostrictive materials has some superiority when compared to other materials. So we have gone for developing these materials in our laboratory. So when we compare the different kind of magnetic materials, as I told you in my first slide itself, all the ferromagnetic materials to some extent shows magnetostriction. When you see the magnetostrictive component from different kind of materials, the standard, the simple nickel shows around -38, iron shows -9. But if you see the rare earth, particularly the lanthanide series, you have a dysprosium and terbium, they show a huge value of around 3800, 2800, etc. But the problem is their ordering temperatures are much less than the room temperature, so it is not practically applicable for any room temperature application. So there is a need to develop some material which can work at room temperature. So these alloys have been found, particularly the TbFe2 and DyFe2 kind of alloys have been discovered, and these alloys are found to show a moderately good magnetostriction at room temperature. Okay, so the studies have just started. These studies have started around 1980s and 1990s from Naval Ordnance Lab, USA. Then we should also know why it is particularly this rare earth and transition metal. Why, what is so great about these two, rare earth and transition? Why we have selected? As you know, all of us know the rare earth alloys are PR, DY, NDSM kind of thing, which is a lanthanide series, 4F elements, and the transition metal we know iron, cobalt, and nickel. And magnetism, which is coming from the rare earth things, are localized 4F electrons, and it has a low Curie temperature, but the magnetic moments are large and the anisotropy is very high. For magnetostriction, as I told you earlier, the anisotropy has to be very high. When you consider the same transition metal, what happens is in the case of a transition metal, it has an iterated 3D electron, the Curie temperatures are high, and the magnetic moments are low, and the spin orbit coupling is relatively low. So now when we combine these two kind of materials, that is a rare earth which is having high anisotropy and low temperature, with transition metal which is having high ordering temperature and low anisotropy, we get magnetostrictive materials with moderate magnetostriction which is working at room temperature. That's how the alloy design of these materials have been predicted, have been modeled, and finally it has been fabricated. So this is how the typical, as I told you, the TbFe2 or R, I mean here the rare earth, any TyFe2 or DyFe2, whatever the alloy you take, this is how the structure looks. This structure is a cubic structure with a C15 Lavoisier structure with a space group of 3FD3 bar M. And this material is having something, its material is highly anisotropic. That means like the magnetic properties are different along different crystallographic direction. So the easy direction of magnetization in this material is along 111 direction. So this right side figure shows how the magnetostriction of different magnetic materials varies with respect to an applied magnetic field. As I told you earlier, the first classic material which was discovered was a terbium ion, TbFe2, which shows a high magnetostriction of 1753. But if you see the magnetic field requirement, it is relatively high. That means you get such a high value at high magnetic field. But to generate such a high magnetic field, we require a very big magnetic field, and your device, final device, become very bulky. So it cannot be used in a practical way. So there is a requirement to reduce anisotropy. That means that it is saturating at high magnetic field essentially signifies the magnetic anisotropy in this material is high. So to reduce the anisotropy in this one, there is something called anisotropy compensation was carried out. Anisotropy compensation was carried out by mixing two different materials having different anisotropy constant, and such a material is called TbDyFe2 alloy. If you see this material is found to saturate at low magnetic field. Although the magnetostriction is low compared to TbFe2, but I get a very high magnetostriction at low fields. So this is the advantage of using this material for any practical device. So accordingly, this material, as I told you, was discovered by Naval Ordnance Lab, USA, and it is called terphenol. Terphenol, basically terphenol T has basically come from TER means terbium, Fe is iron, NOL refers to Naval Ordnance Lab, and D refers to dysprosium. So the name has been coined based on the composition of this particular alloy. In this alloy, there are also some challenges which we need to undergo while fabricating this alloy. As I told you, this material is an anisotropic material. That means its magnetic properties are different along different directions. So to have the maximum magnetic property, it is essential to orient this material. We don't actually want a single crystal in this material. We want to have something kind of a grain orientation, or rather I should tell you some texture is required in this material. That means I have a preferential orientation of 111 direction along the length of the sample. Okay, and as I told you, the anisotropy is very high and it has to be compensated. Such compensation of anisotropy has been carried out by combining two different rares dy and ty, and this alloy has been found out. So the next important thing is, like, as a metallurgist or a material scientist, it is important to see the phase diagram of this alloy, because we need to see what are the other phases which are going to be formed and what are the implications of those phases on the magnetic properties. And based on that one, our aim is to evolve a structure process property correlation in this one. The processing technique what we adopted here is a direction solidification technique, and we have used two techniques. One is the zoning technique, other is a modified Bridgman technique. Here we have two parameters which we can play around. One is the solidification velocity. Here what I mean is, like, we take the melt the material to high temperature by using a seed crystal, and we slowly pull it from the high temperature zone. The temperature zone is a difference in temperature between the seed where we have the seed and the melted portion. More the temperature gradient is there, more the orientation we can play around. So the property which we are looking are magnetostriction, static strain coefficient, that is the rate of change of magnetostriction with respect to the magnetic field, dynamic strain, and the coupling coefficient. Coupling coefficient, I mean the change in the output voltage with respect to the input voltage. The structure, as far as structures are concerned, our interest is to see the various phases present in that one, the grain sizes present, and the texture, what kind of texture we are going to have. So this material is also a challenging material to produce. The challenges are the composition control is very important, because if you see the the phase diagram, it is not having any solubility. We have a very narrow solubility range. So the composition control is very important. We need to play around. And one more thing is, this material is formed by a peritectic reaction. Peritectic reaction, I mean the liquid plus this RFE3 phase forms this RFE2 phase. So this peritectic reaction has to be suppressed somehow. And the third one is the reactivity of the rare earth. As we know, rare earth is highly reactive. You keep it for some time, it gets oxidized. So the mold is very important. Vacuum conditions are very important. Otherwise, the material gets oxidized. All those challenges are there. So with all these challenges, we have initiated this material development program. And the first one is to develop this material by a technique called zoning technique. The first and foremost thing what we use is here vacuum induction melting and casting. Here the vacuum induction melting, we take the stoichiometric composition of dy, Tb and Fe in a alumina crucible. We put everything under vacuum and then we melt this alloy by powering the induction coil. The alloys melted will be casted in a quartz tube. This casted alloy were directly solidified by using zoning technique. And this technique we have extensively used the facilities available at IIT Madras. What happens is, you have an induction coil here. Over the induction coil, inside the induction coil, you keep your material and then you slowly move the coil from top to bottom. When we move the coil from top to bottom, what happens is there is a preferential growth of grains happening. And this preferential growth of grain is found to be dependent on the pulling rates, that is the what rate I move the induction coil. Like it is, we are pulled around 18, 36 and 72 centimeters per hour, and we are also characterized for magnetostriction. The first and foremost thing, when many material what we see is the first the microstructure what we see. When we see the as-cast microstructure, I mean the material has melted. When you see the microstructure of this alloy, I could see the matrix phase, that is the phase which I wanted, that is particularly the RFE2 phase. In addition to this one, I am also able to see phase RFE3 phase. That means the peritectic reaction is not complete here. Okay, but upon solidification, that is upon induction melting, once again using the zoning furnace, it is completely devoid of this RFE3 phase. So there is no problem about the peritectic reaction. So it is showing only the RFE2 phase. Apart from that one, some rare switch phases are also seen. But when we try to measure the magnetostriction, to our surprise, what we observed is the as-cast alloy did not show much of magnetostriction. This basically happens because you have an RFE3 phase which is magnetic, and it is also compensating the magnetostriction from the RFE2 phase. But I don't have an RFE2 phase, but still the magnetostriction values are found to be different. But the microstructure is not showing much of the things. So we wanted to see, is there any effect of texture playing a role in this one? So we have gone for measuring the texture in this one by using a technique called like pole figures, by generating a pole figures or X-ray texture goniometer we have used. Before going that one, first we try to see with the conventional XRD. We have cut the sample because it's basically a rod sample. We have cut the sample along the longitudinal direction and we try to see the XRD. From XRD, we could see some glimpses that there is some orientation of 112 kind of orientation, but this is not a complete technique. I'm not able to exactly quantify what kind of texture is forming in this one. So the most viable way to do is to see the X-ray texture goniometer, where we can generate the pole figure and also we can quantify what kind of texture is going. So to our surprise, what we saw is when we change the growth rate, the textures are going to be different. But higher pulling rate, what we observed is we got a texture very close to 112 direction. If you see the angular orientation between 111 direction, which is the easy direction of magnetization, and 112 direction, that misorientation is less. Since the misorientation is less, we have a very near orientation along 111 direction. We have got a high magnetization when we try to pull at higher pulling speed. So this essentially signifies that not only the microstructure is important, it is also important to have a good texture to have high magnetostrictive. These are some of the magnetostrictive rods which have been developed in our laboratory, and these are some of the polished rods. And we have also developed a flux tensional transducer in our sister lab. Yeah.
त्याचं बटन खराब झालं.
Anything?
Sorry, it was a disturbance, I think.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So the magnetostrictive rods which I have developed earlier, which are shown, are only 8 mm diameter, but our sister laboratories require magnetostrictive rods up to 30 mm diameter and up to 80 mm long. So there is a requirement to have bigger diameter rods, but when you the scaling of materials, as we see, like there are a lot of challenges when we scale the material. For example, an 8 mm rod is only some 50 or 60 grams, but when I go for 30 mm diameter rod, it's 1 kg. Okay, so there is a huge challenge when we scale it up. So we have, for scaling up, zoning technique was not a viable technique for us because the sizes whatever we require are not suitable for us, and further the magnetostriction whatever we have achieved was also relatively low in that one. And there is a huge reaction within the metal and mold. There are some other challenges in that one. So we have gone for indigenously making our own furnace, and this is the Indivac fabricator. The Indian company Indivac has fabricated for this one, and this is a modified Bridgman furnace. In modified Bridgman furnace, what we do is we make a seed crystal, and the seed crystal will be kept over a water-cooled steel plate. And the rod which has to be melted, the other part of the rod which is melted, will be kept on a hot zone. Since the seed crystal is over a water-cooled chill plate, it doesn't melt, and the other portion of the rod is getting melted. And from the hot zone, I slowly pull towards the solidification chamber at a predetermined rate. So the same kind of velocities have been utilized here also. We see that the ASCA sample showed a low magnetostriction as usual because of the RFE3 phase, and also we have done at 18, 36, and 72 centimeter. As we see in this one also, as we increase the pulling rate, the magnetostriction is found to increase. So to essentially see that one, again we went for texture measurements. The microstructure initially showed it is a single phase microstructure. It is not having any secondary phase. The compositions are found to be homogeneously uniform, but the texture whatever we has been found is 112 texture which is required. With this rod, with the sample, the magnetostriction whatever we have measured was found to be surpassing the value what has been internationally reported. There is a company in US which is Etrima USA which supplies this kind of material. The values whatever the magnetostriction we have achieved was found to be much superior than what has been supplied by Etrima also. So with this one, the material development program was very successful, and we were able to measure, produce magnetostrictive rods up to 30 mm diameter and 80 mm long without any pores or without any defects. We have also done a radiography to see is there any kind of porosity inside the sample, and also we have done all NDT techniques to see the defects present in the sample. We found like that it is an integrated piece without any pores or any porosities or any defects. But we have also not stopped only with producing the material. We have gone to the next stage of developing a transducer also. So we have attempted to produce a Tonfils kind of transducer initially, but the Tonfils kinds of transducers, although it is useful only for a proof of concept, but in an actual device we wanted to have a transducer which produces a huge ultrasonic radiation over a wide range. So we have gone for a 4 transducer rod assembly, and the magnetic field we applied using a resin bonded magnet. This is a resin bonded magnet. We have found our own coils and other things, and this entire assembly was integrated inside a transducer module, and this was put under water. Okay, and we have measured the ultrasonic waves like produced under the water with use of a piezoelectric transducer, and it is found to show a high response around 1 kilohertz. 1 kilohertz is one frequency, low frequency. It is very important because at high frequency, what happens is there is an attenuation of waves will be more there. So this works in the case of a low frequency transducer, and the output was found to be around 172 decibels, which is the actual requirement of the users. So the material program, whatever we have taken up in this one, not only we could develop the material, we have also ensured that this material is being used at some user level, and these user trials are being undergone. But although this magnetostrictive material, whatever I talked, particularly this TBDY Fe2 material is a good magnetostrictive material which shows high friction, but there are some problem in this material. That means the materials are very brittle. For example, if you just put the tap, the material will break. The ultimate tensile strains is like what we call the mechanical behavior UTS is only 28, so it is very brittle and it is very fragile, and utmost care has to be taken. The second most important thing is the reactivity, because as I told you, rare earths are highly reactive. If you keep it for a longer time, it gets oxidized. And the third is the most important thing is the cost of the rare earths. The rare earth is being controlled by Chinese market, and it is very difficult to get these rare earths. So there is a requirement to see alternative materials to which shows good magnetostriction, but like compromising on the cost, compromising on the reactivity, and compromising on the brittleness. And also the most important thing is the bias field requirement, because the size of the device basically depends on the size of the bias field what you are going to have. So in this one, the emerging new material which is coming is the iron gallium based alloy. So this iron gallium based alloys material program also has been taken up. When I compare this iron gallium alloy with the conventional RFP2 alloys, the magnetostriction what it shows is only 400, but the only difference is it shows 2000 micro strains or the 2000 strains at 10 kilo oysters, but it shows only at 200 oysters. You see the graph, you see whatever you want is being generated at very low fields. That means what I mean to say is essentially you can strain the sample with a normal toy magnet, whatever we are having. Okay, but to bias this material, we need an electromagnet or a big neodymium iron boron magnet kind of thing. As I told you, the UTS, that is ultimate tensile stress, is only 28 here, but it is iron, it is very high, it is 700. The percentage of elongation is not there at all. You cannot elongate the material, but it is more than 3%. The coercivities are much less because anisotropy is low. The Curie temperature is more than 700 degrees centigrade, and this is the less expensive compared to this one. For example, this is $0.5 per gram. This is only $0.08 per gram. So, but the advantage what we are supposed to get, we are getting in this one. So we have also gone for developing this material because it's more cost effective and the processing are also relatively small. So again, as I told you, this is very important. We need to see the phase diagram of this alloy. When we see the phase diagram, the composition of interest basically lies between 17 to 30. This is the composition range. It forms a variety of phases, that is alpha, beta, like you have a DO3, L12, several things kind of phases gone. Like we have tried to attempt or try to address each and every metallurgical challenge what we had in this development program. We process this material by a technique called arc melting technique, and we have taken the composition from 17 to 30. We have prepared the material by arc melting. When we have heat treated at 1000 degrees centigrade, we have adapted different cooling, furnace cooling, oil quenching, all those things. And this is how the alloy button looks. And this we have cut by EDM wire cutting, that is electrical discharge machining, and we have characterized for XRD, SEM, EDAX, magnetization, coercivity, so many, all the other things have been carried out. When we see the, first of all, as I told you, the microstructure, which is very important, we see the microstructure shows the presence of only a single phase, that is alpha Fe phase for 17. But as I increase the composition, I could see the other phases also coming into the picture. Okay, when I see the magnetostriction with respect to this one, like the magnetostriction is found to show a two peak behavior kind of thing. It shows, that means like it is increasing and then it shows a decreasing trend. To identify this one, to what are the different kind of phases is found. Fortunately, since all the phases are going to be ferromagnetic, we adopted Mossbauer spectroscopy technique to quantify the different phases. Not quantify, to qualitatively tell what are the different phases, because different phases have different magnetic moments. So we have done the Mossbauer, and the distribution, hyperfine distribution spectra is shown here. If you see the variation of with respect to the magnetic field and the distribution spectra, the 17 alloy showed a single phase, which is only because of the alpha Fe. But as we go to 30, it shows an alpha Fe, that is the A2 phase. We have L12 phase and DO3 phase, and all the observations, whatever we are seeing, is closely matching with the microstructure. And based on the magnetostriction study also, we have found that the quenched alloy is found to have high magnetostriction. This is basically because the single phase material shows high magnetostriction because this DO3 and L12 are having a negative magnetostriction. So to have the single phase, what we have done is we have gone to the phase diagram in this portion and then we tried to quench the alloy from high temperature. We heated to up to some 1000 degrees centigrade. From 1000 degrees centigrade, when we quench the alloy from this 1000 degree, we could essentially retain the high temperature phase, and we retain the high temperature phase, we could get a high magnetostriction. But the same thing did not happen in furnace cool because it's a more an equilibrium process. In equilibrium process, you also get the other phases coming into picture. So this is why. So this study have shown that by using iron gallium around a composition of 22 atom% of gallium, we can achieve high magnetostriction by this has been completed. After completing this one, we thought like we will take the same material program in the form of a thin film form also. And this is one of the major program what we got in our laboratory to develop functional thin films with the device quality functional thin films for variety of applications, particularly pertaining to device. So the thrust areas of thin films what we are being carried out at DMRL are the development of spintronic thin films, magnetostrictive thin films, magnetoelectric and hard magnetic thin films, with an application such as actuators, magnetic field sensors, and RF MEMS kind of devices. These RF MEMS kind of devices are basically using the ceramic thin films. And these are some of the devices which we have kept in our mind for developing this material. So first we wanted to develop the material in the form of thin films, and then we wanted to go for the development of devices. So this is one of the spintronic based thin films where we use a tunnel junctions by using a FeCO layer and MgO as a tunneling barrier and the like CO to FeSi, which is the Hausler law. We have done a point wave Andrew reflection technique and we have measured the spin polarization. And this is one of the most challenging technique, as everyone knows, because we need to have a tunnel barrier of 1 nanometer and this has to be uniform throughout the film. Okay, so this is one of the most important challenges. Well, successfully we can overcome this challenge, and we have also done carried out a magnetoelectric based material where we use a piezoelectric material and a ferroelectric material. What happens is we have a bilayer of these two material. When you apply a magnetic field, the magnetic field strains produces a magnetostriction, produces a strain, and this strain imparted to the piezoelectric layer or the ferroelectric layer. As a result, an voltage is generated. This is used in electric energy harvesters, piezoelectric magnetic generators, etc. So this is also one of the area being carried out. And also our lab core competence is developing of permanent magnets like neodymium ion, samarium cobalt magnets. So we wanted to see the same thing in the form of thin films. Also, we have used samarium cobalt 5 Fe multi-layers and also FePt Fe multi-layers, and we could see an energy product of nearly 32 megagauss oysters in these films. This is one of the major achievement what has happened in the case of permanent magnet thin films. So these are some of the facilities what we have in our laboratory. That is, we have a ultra high vacuum sputtering system, pulse laser deposition, electron beam. We have a rapid thermal annealing and multi-target sputtering, and we use different kind of techniques. If it is an oxide, we use oxide films. For tunnel junctions, we use this ultra high things. For thicker films, you go for electron beam metallization. So different things to avoid cross contaminations and other things, we use different kind of processing facilities in our laboratory. And we also have a wide characterization facility like VSM. We have a magnetostrain measurement system, nanoindentator, stress analysis, profilometers, etc. We have different facilities also to characterize them. So with this one, we have tried to start characterizing growing these films, RFE thin films, first of all, for growth of RFE thin films with a motivation. Like as I told you earlier, RFE3 films are basically TBFE or TBFE-CO based thin films, and this shows a rich phase diagram. The phase diagram showed that the material showed an in-plane and out-of-plane magnetic anisotropies based on the TB to FeCO ratio. So we wanted to have a phase equilibrium in this one and to generate a magnetic phase diagram. So we have taken films with different compositions and we try to see the magnetic properties by using magnetic microscopic techniques, particularly a magneto-optic microscopic study correlating with magnetization studies. The film grown with this composition, namely 21 and 79, showed a very strong out-of-plane magnetic anisotropy. This you see a typical labyrinth kind of domain patterns, and also the out-of-plane magnetization curves showed a high coercivity in this one. And also the transmission electron microscopy study showed that the film substrate interface is going to be very sharp. We don't have any interface, and also the films are found to be completely amorphous. And we could see some nano channels growing, and these nano channels are responsible for producing the strong out-of-plane magnetic anisotropy. We also tried to tune the magnetic anisotropy by doing a rapid thermal annealing, and rapid thermal annealing was carried out at different temperatures. When we did that temperature, the out of plane anisotropy was slowly trying to turn towards the in-plane magnetic anisotropy, and this has been complemented with magnetic force imaging techniques where you see the out of plane magnetic anisotropy is completely becoming an in-plane magnetic anisotropy. These are the magnetization results. You can see like the red curve is the in-plane curve. Slowly this in-plane curve is becoming, sorry, the red curve is out of plane curve. Slowly the out of plane curve is slowly becoming a hard direction. And the coercivity variations and all those things have been done. And you can, if you want further details, you can see from some of the publications what we have made in these films. To understand this one, we have also done depth resolved electron microscopy studies. When we heat treated this material, what we found is like we found ultra fine nanocrystals of FeCO precipitates have been found. As we do a rapid thermal annealing, we also observed that the film substrate interface is going to become very rough. You see there is a reaction happening at the film substrate interface. If you want to see more clearly, high resolution TEM image shows there is a diffusion of this material into silicon. The silicon interface is becoming very bad, and as we increase the temperature, silicon interface is becoming much worse. So we have also done variety of magnetic simulations to find the tilting magnetic anisotropy by using WOMF, object-oriented micromagnetic framework, and also we could find what are the tilt angles present in these materials by using detailed micromagnetic simulations. And we found that different energies, anisotropy energy, demagnetizing energy, Zeeman energy, what are the contributions from different things, and we could try to correlate with the experimental findings what we have done. Okay, so we also try to understand the role of thickness and composition at some other composition. Basically, this is the iron-rich composition. We could see the microstructure as we see from the microstructure at higher thicknesses. We could see perpendicular growth of these columns kind of structure. And when we did a columnar microstructure, we could see cross-sectional microstructure. We should see nice columns. As I told you earlier, these nice columns are responsible for producing the out-of-plane magnetic anisotropy. So to understand this further, we have also carried out a magnetostriction measurement, and this magnetostriction measurement has been carried out by using a laser Doppler interferometer, and the magnetostriction was found to decrease with increasing the film thickness. This basically happens as the out-of-plane magnetic anisotropy is increasing, the magnetostriction, overall magnetostriction decreases. To complement the results what we have seen earlier, we have also done magneto-optic Kerr microscopy studies using longitudinal MOC, and the longitudinal MOC studies shows a strong band domain kind of patterns, and the material is found to be anisotropic. That means along the plane of the film also, if you rotate the film at different direction, you see different kind of domain patterns. Along the easy direction of magnetization, you see a band domain pattern. When you go towards the hard direction of magnetization, you see the presence of ripple kind of patterns. This essentially shows the easy and hard direction. The direction along with the coercivity is maximum is the easy direction, and the perpendicular direction is the hard direction. And this has been complemented with vibrating sample magnetometer measurements. And the outer plane anisotropy is also measured with like magnetic force microscope images. Although these materials, as I told you, rarest materials showed out of plane magnetic anisotropy, and the magnetostrictions are very less. So we have gone for developing the same iron gallium based material in the thin film form also. So we have prepared our own targets by induction melting, and then this is the sputtering target which looks, and these are the sputtering parameters which we have used for growing these films. And since there are several parameters in this one, like you have to do nearly several hundreds of experiments to optimize the process. So what we have done is we have used a statistical modeling, basically using Taguchi approach, for using 4 levels and 4 process parameters to design of experiments have been carried out. And these, based on the design of experiments what we have carried out, we are interested to see the different parameters like composition, thickness, grain size, surface roughness, mechanical properties, and magnetostriction. And from this design of experiments, we could see that the optimized parameters are something like this: the sputtering power, pressure, target to substrate distance, and the sputtering time. This is the optimized parameters what we have calibrated, or what we have calculated based on the different experiments what we have calculated. We have also tried to measure the effect by seeing the microstructure and the X-ray diffraction studies, and we have found that the magnetostriction, whatever we are, the magnetized measurement show the coercivities have been found to be high. To reduce the coercivity, we thought the stresses levels are found to be very high. The stress levels are found to be around 280 MPa. To reduce the stresses, what we have done is we have gone for a underlayer deposition. We used titanium as underlayer. When we use titanium as an underlayer, what we observed is the anisotropy is found to be highly in plane, and this is very clearly seen from the magneto-optical microscopy studies. And also when you see the magnetostriction curve, without titanium underlayer, you can see the magnetostriction is found to be low, but with titanium underlayer, there is a considerable improvement in the magnetostriction. And this shows this basically because of the band domain formation, but without titanium underlayer, it forms a ripple kind of pattern. So the magnetic microstructures play a very, very key role in determining the magnetic properties. So it is essential that we need to check the magnetic microscopic investigations in these films. So we have also adopted growing at different temperatures. When we grow at different temperatures, we got like globular kind of features, and the roughnesses are found to be very high. And we could see, although it forms all of them in A2 phase, but we could see like the presence of some other phases also could be identified in this one. And this is the cross-section transmission electron microscopy images which we have carried out on these films. And we could see like the magnetic measurement showed a high coercivity upon heat treatment. The coercivity was found to decrease, but the coercivity was found to decrease to as low as 2 nanometers when we did at 450 degrees centigrade annealing treatment. So 450 degree annealing treatment was found to be suitable for the optimized composition. That also we have done. And we have measured the strain in this one, and we could see a maximum strain of 5 microns in these films by using a laser Doppler vibrometer. So having done these films, we have also not stopped at that level. We have gone to the next level of fabricating a sensor. This is basically a magnetic field sensor, magnetoelectric based magnetic field sensor. This is used for finding magnetic signatures in naval system. You know, the Earth magnetic field is constant at a particular place because Earth itself is a huge magnet. But as and when we have some naval ship or a naval vessel moving in this one, you know, naval ship are having a huge tons and tons of iron in this one, and they are having some inherent magnetic field. These disturb the magnetic field, Earth's magnetic field. When we have a disturbance in the magnetic field, our enemy can detect a landmine in this one, which can be detonated. So to reduce the naval ordinances, it is important to verify the magnetic field, what is there. So we need magnetic field sensors to measure the magnetic field less than the Earth's magnetic field. For example, this is a naval vessel, and if you see how much this is without any change in the magnetic field, like constant magnetic field, but as and when it moves, it creates a huge change in the magnetic field. So we need to produce several sensors to detect these naval signatures or the magnetic signatures in this material. So for this one, we have used a magnetoelectric thing. As I told you, magnetoelectric is nothing but a magnetostrictive and electromagnetic material, which is a sandwich layer, and we have used a cantilever based magnetoelectric layer for fabricating this device. We have used a standard lithography process for developing these devices. We have used a photolithography technique for developing these cantilevers. All the silicon cantilevers were found to be straight without any deflection. We also measure the mechanical integrity of the transducers, like these cantilevers, by measuring the resonance frequency, and the resonance frequency is found to be inversely proportional to the length of the cantilevers. So this essentially shows there are no harmonics in this one. It is only a single frequency what I am going to do. And this is the processing technique. We have used RCA cleaning, spin coating with the photoresist. We have used a mask aligner for defining the pattern. Or we have done wet etching, photoresist removal, and finally deep reactive ion etching were used for removing the under this releasing the cantilever. We have deposited our magnetostrictive layer, and we try to measure the deflection in this one. You can see this is the photography of the cantilever before and after application of a magnetic field. Without application of magnetic field, it is straight, and as I apply a magnetic field, there is a huge displacement, as good as high as 2 microns have been, 2.5 micron deflection has been observed in this cantilevers. We also deposited the piezoelectric material, namely the zinc oxide material, and we also seen a similar deflection with an application of magnetic field, and we have a huge resonance around huge deflection of around 907 nanometers at 10 kilohertz reference frequency. The variation of AC voltage with respect to deflection shows a 2.5 micron deflection in this case. So now what we have done is we have integrated these two things by adopting a 7-mask lithography process. The 7-mask lithography process is something like that. First, thermal oxidation of the silicon wafer, window opening by micro machining. After that one, patterning the film for deposition of the by photolithography technique for deposition of the iron gallium layer, deposition of the iron gallium layer. Then we have to define the bottom electrode, deposit zinc oxide, define the top electrode. We have to make the contact pad. After making that one, you use the bulk etching technique, that is a named wet etching, to remove the bulk of the material, and finally releasing the cantilever from the main structure by using a deep reactive ion etching. So this is how the cantilever assembly, the devices looks in an actual device. Okay. This This is a scanning electron microscopy. This entire assembly has been put in a dual inline pin package, and these devices have been packaged. This is how a desired assembly looks. These are the cantilevers with having different length, and these cantilevers wires have been taken by wire bonding technique, and the electrical connections have been made. We have tried to measure the variation of frequency with respect to the output voltage for different fields. We could see like around the resonance frequency, as you know, the resonance frequency shows a maximum vibration. Around the resonance frequency, the output voltage has been found to be extremely high. This shows the variation of the output voltage with the AC magnetic field, and we could see the response is very good even up to 1 oysters. Okay, the magnetic field sensitivity has been found to be less than 1 oysters. I mean, the magnetic field sensitivity has been found to be 25 millivolts per oysters at 1 kilohertz, which is the resonance frequency, and these devices are found to be very much suitable for detecting magnetic signatures in naval system. So these devices, this in the process of reproduction and other things are being carried out. Once this is there, we will go for actually using these devices in naval system. It's also worth mentioning at this point, this is the first MEMS based magnetic field sensors developed in the country. So to finally conclude my talk, we have successfully developed magnetostrictive material, both bulk and thin film form with high magnetostriction. The material R&D, we have not stopped only with material R&D. We have also taken this one, extended this one to device fabrication and characterization. We could successfully develop acoustic transducers and magnetic field sensors based on the magnetostrictive. So with this one, I would like to thank the organizers for giving this opportunity to present our work in your program, AICTE program, interactive program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Aruchelvan, for a very nice and elaborate talk on magnetic materials, methods of preparation, characterization in a very detailed manner. So now I request the participants to interact with the expert who are pursuing in magnetic materials research. So now the session is open for discussion. If you have any questions, please raise your hand so that we can unmute.
Ma'am, there are some few questions in the chat box also.
Yes. There is one question from Dr. Ashok Behera.
Okay.
Dr. Ashok Behera, are you around? He has asked, can you explain the biomedical application of magnetostrictor? How to use this for cancer therapy?
No. See, basically when we use something for cancer therapy, it is used in hyperthermia. Locally it has to be heated. Although this material, like cobalt ferrite, particularly the cobalt ferrite and nickel ferrite kind of nanoparticles, what happens is when you apply a magnetic field, what is being observed is it produces a local heating because of the hysteresis. Okay, this hysteresis loss is manifested as heating, and this has been heating effects have been found to kill some cancer cells, and some studies have been done by a group in IIT Bombay. I think Professor Bahadur's group, in IIT Bombay, for using them in some rats and rabbit kind of things have been already done. We have not actually done any biomedical applications with this material, but something has been done, particularly with this cobalt ferrite alloy or nickel ferrite alloy from the group in IIT Bombay.
Hello. Yes, sir. Nice lecture, sir. Can you tell me what would be the basic principle for the therapy? I am interested in that actually. What would be the mechanism or basic therapy for that the magneto restrict if you are going to apply for the cancer?
No, that's what I'm telling. See, we have not done. See, basically, what in cancer therapy, what they are using is only the hysteresis loss. What is developed in the material is being used. Okay, and the cobalt ferrite is one thing. Nickel ferrite is one thing. I think it has been proven also some biocompatibility is there. Okay, so we have basically, as I told you, the micro pump what has been showed some biomedical kind of application only for giving the like what medicine doses at a predetermined interval. Some, for example, a diabetic patient or someone requires doesn't require the insulin level all throughout at one shot. He requires slow dose of insulin kind of thing. So those kind of times, okay, these micro pumps can be used to inject the insulin at a predetermined time or for a continuous process. Otherwise, like not much of like cancer therapies have been attempted in this particular, I mean to say, in this kind of terphenol or galphenol kind of products. As I told you, you can go through the research contribution from Professor Bahadur because he has done something on like cobalt ferrite based material. I am not very much aware of that work.
Actually, I saw some research article during your lecture also. So I found that one person is there, that is Dr. G.S. Nair. If you know, he's in Bangalore, so he's having a cytotron R. But the principle is not, I'm not understanding the principle. He's saying that on the basis of vibration only, he's going to therapy.
Yeah, that's what I was
magnetostrom. How is that, that we have to know the exact mechanism.
Yeah.
And only one can think and design the molecule.
Yeah, whenever there is going to be a vibration in the molecule, it is also going to produce some heat. Okay, this heating, because there is an hysteresis loss even in the case of a magnetostriction also. As I told you, like when I showed, there is an hysteresis loss even in the case of magnetostriction also, it's happening. And this heating effect, whatever is happening, is going to be useful for like the localized heating effects, what is going to happen. Okay, see, one thing is, as I told you, the hysteresis loss is there in any material that is going to give some heating effect. Added to that one, when the material is going to be magnetostrict, this is also going to give some more additional effects also going to happen. But those kind of manifestations, at least I have not done in detail because it's mostly very much different for my purview of research. So probably if you can share me some of the things which you have, I can give some comments on that. Right now, I am not able to tell anything about it.
Okay, sir. I'm sharing that one with you.
Yeah.
In the group.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions? There is one question from Srinivashan. Sir, you have showed the pole figures of as-cast samples to understand crystallographic texture. Can we fine-tune the magnetic properties based on the texture during casting itself?
Yeah. Yes. You can do by casting itself. You can do probably a simple technique. What I would suggest you to do is by using a chill casting. You do somehow you use a mold. You cool the mold. Okay, while casting the alloy. So what happens is you get fine grains initially. After fine grains, you will start seeing some kind of orientation happening under the as-cast condition itself. The other option what you can do is you can also do a mold heating also you can do during casting. That also can give some kind of texture. That's possible. We have done, like we have basically prepared our seed crystal only by casting the material. We want a water cooled chill plate in as-cast condition itself.
Hope Srinivashan is, he has heard to this discussion. And there is one more question from Ajay Pratap Singh. Does the shape sensitivity of nitinol can be used for compactizations of vehicles into pocket vehicle?
See, the problem is with nitinol, the problem is the temperatures are very high. We need to go to high temperature. Whether that will be useful for them, that we have to see. Like, okay, it is possible, but only thing is the temperature constraints. They have to look into it.
Okay, what kind of environments it will be
Yes,
useful?
exactly. Yes.
Yes. Okay. There is another question from Anand Thale. What is the effect of thickness of thin film on crystal structure?
Okay, thickness, what we have seen is like when we increase the thickness, okay, particularly these films are polycrystalline. First, what we observed is basic observation is initially the films were amorphous, okay. As we increase the thickness, slowly we could see some kind of crystallization happening in this film. And also what we found is like there are some columnar structures were also growing, and we could see also some texture. I'm not generalizing this one, but pertaining to this material, okay, this iron gallium or rare earth transition metal intermetallics, I could see this behavior. And also the magnetic domains were also found to have a radical change. Initially, when we see the films are showing a strong in-plane magnetic anisotropy, as and when I increase the thickness, these films are found to show a very, very strong out-of-plane magnetic anisotropy. So there is a considerable change what we have seen in the magnetic properties or with respect to the, and also with respect to the crystal structure in these films. That's what, like, this is, I cannot generalize it, but pertaining to this magnetostrictive material is what we have seen.
Are there any other questions from the participants? I have a small question. In some part of your talk, you discussed about pumping in microfluidics.
Yes.
Can you can you discuss a little?
Yeah, it's a micro pump basically. Yeah.
Micro pump.
Exists.
In the beginning of your
talk. It's one of the application what people have seen, like. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is with magnetostrictive.
Yeah. The magnetostriction, what happens is here, like when I apply a magnetic field, it is going to work something like a cantilever because both the ends are open. So this first, initially the bottom thing will open, okay, bottom thing will bend down. As a result, there will be some pressure difference. As a result, the fluid will pass through this channel.
Okay.
Then when I apply a magnetic field in the perpendicular direction, the top thing will come down. There will be some pressure difference. So there will be a motion of the liquid towards the channel. So like this, when you apply an alternative magnetic field both on the top and bottom direction, not the perpendicular direction, there is, due to the pressure difference happening in the fluid channel, there is a
pumping of
the liquid happening.
So it can help in automation and other things.
Yeah. Yes. But only thing is, as I told you, the fluid pumping capacity is 5 microliters. Not such that 5 microliters per thing. That's what, as I told you, this has been envisaged from using in. See, what happens is when you give a diabetic insulin, what happens at a time you give lot of insulin, so the diabetics level comes down drastically, and sometimes the sugar level comes down, they faint. Okay?
Yes.
It's important to give a continuous flow, like
sustained release
of insulin. So there you can use this kind of micro pumps.
Okay. So
that's what, like, this was not considered for a defense application because our army people have to be more fit. Okay, so this is one of the very civilian application what has been thought of for from this material. So
the whole device will be like implant kind, or
it has to be implanted.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Dr. Senthil, so what do we do?
Yeah, madam, we can conclude.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, I thank the speaker for his very elaborate talk on magnetic materials, and then how to prepare them, and sharing with us all the facilities that he has used, and how he went on about characterizing them, and what are the different kind of applications that are being done with the help of these materials. I believe this kind of talk will be very useful for the people who are working in magnetic materials, and especially to the young researchers to understand what is happening in the field. It was a very good overview of the topic, and I believe many will benefit out of this talk. So thank you, Dr. Arupchervani, for your time and sharing your expertise in this talk. So thank you very much. And I also thank all the participants. Now I hand over the session to Dr. Senthil.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, sir. On behalf of organizing committee and SRM IST Nanotechnology Research Center, we thank you for accepting our invitation and giving an excellent talk. I also thank Dr. Malar for chairing this session, and thank you, sir. Thank you, madam.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to again thank Dr. Malar and all the organizers and the Kamala
Thank you.
Bharati, everyone for giving this opportunity. It's nice to see you like after a long time. That is one more thing happened during this
Yes.
talk. Like it's nice.
Yes.
If you would like to interact, continue interacting.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. It was good having you in this platform. Thank you. Yeah,
Bye-bye.
yeah, bye.
So, participants, we end this session now, and we will again meet at 11:10. I repeat, 11:10. Thank you.